let me start by congratulating you. You just reported, I think, either your third or your fourth straight quarter with a combined ratio, a profit in the
under 100
of under 100 in the core business. So you seem to be doing something right.
Well, we're no longer doing the things that were all wrong. So I guess that's a premise. Yeah, 3 straight quarters, right? So it's not even a year yet. It's kind of, you know, it's when we had one. Of course, all the investors said, "Well, that's one."
Yeah.
We'd like to see 2 in a row. And I said, we can't have 2 in a row without 1 in a row, you know. So anyway, now we get 3 in a row.
Yeah.
I'm very confident, given what we're doing. And of course, the tailwind from the market is a very big help in this process, that will close the year with that profit. Of course, it's excluding natural disasters, right? And so in the third quarter, we had additional losses from cats. But if you add it all up, I think we're well on our way.
Yes. And tell me about the last 2 years. You've had you've put a lot of changes in place. Tell us, what are the kind of major milestones you passed, and what are the milestones you see coming down the road?
Well, you know, first I think 9 months maybe was a time of discovery, really, just to understand what we had. You know, when the 9 months were finished, I still didn't understand everything, right? It still took us some time to continue the discovery. It took a little longer. Things were worse than I thought. So that was one thing, is just understanding what the totality of the problems were. The organization structure was odd, to say the least, odd. You know, no one could explain it to me. It confused everybody in the company. That in itself is, you know, how do you organize a company this way? You know, how do you actually get things done? That's one problem. The second problem was we knew we needed to add talent. I didn't know where to put them. I mean, I said, look, thank you. We really want you to come. I don't know where to put you right now. I've got to fix the structure. So I actually have a job, because there's no job makes any sense right now for most part. So that was a big issue.
Sketch the organizational map as it is now.
It's very simple. I mean, we have life and we have general insurance. Breakthrough kind of organization structure. You'd say, well, what was it otherwise? I can't even explain it. I can't even explain it. You know, when I go up to heaven, I'm going to ask, you know, I've had a lot of questions, Father, but could you just explain this organization structure to me? That's the first question I have. Yeah, I can't, so don't even go there, please. But now it's pretty simple. You know, we have international and domestic general insurance. We only have basically domestic life, and so it's a pretty simple structure, but that helps you, you know, go to work every day. You know what your job is. You know, people were reporting to two different organization structures in the same country. Very strange. Anyway, so that was a relatively simple thing to come up with a concept, but then executing it, getting everybody to buy in that this makes sense, that doesn't make sense, and then get the people. So really the big issue, the big breakthrough was the discovery that people wanted to join the company. I really was worried about that, because I was telling somebody earlier, you know, I knew I was going to be asked, and you know, I did the list of who could do it. Not that many on the list. Then I made a second cut, was who was stupid enough to do it. It was just me. You know, I said, so then was there anybody stupid enough to come, you know? Yeah. But Peter Zaffino, he's not a stupid man. He was a brave man, and Peter came, and then we started to build up the team, and now there's a whole different feeling. You know, it's like the place to be. You know, we have, you know, that old term about missionaries and mercenaries. The people who have come are really missionaries. They want to see, you know, when they look back on their life, that one of the great things they did was help turn around AIG. So we get a lot of people coming to do that, you know.
There must have been, obviously, AIG had a pretty serious reputational crisis, but there must have been a kernel there for you to get the people that you've gotten and to turn it around the way you have. There must have been a kernel of AIG culture that was there, that was valuable, and that you could sell to prospective partners.
Yeah, I think the culture is an important thing. You know, there were very good parts of the culture improvements from when I left. We were a divisive group, pitted against each other. We fought everybody. We fought inside the company. We fought outside the company. We just fought all the time. I mean, that's an interesting concept. But it's true. I used to say if there was only one company left in the market, it was AIG, it'd still be a soft market because we were constantly competing with each other. But I came back to a company that had gone through such crises, and the only way it survived was for people to join together, right? Watch each other, protect each other. And so there was a collegial atmosphere in the company that was incredible, a culture of a belief in diversity and inclusion, very strong, but it had lost its way in an underwriting culture of understanding what to do, when to do it. And that culture we had to remind people. I said, I think it was in the DNA someplace. We had to kind of dredge it up.
So you've changed. You've made, as the combined ratio shows, you've changed the way you think about risk a little bit, and you've changed the way the company uses reinsurance as a tool. Could you talk a little bit about those two, the changes you've made?
Well, I think I have a healthy respect for the risk we take, and if you look at what AIG does, they tend to play down in the curve, at the end of the curve, and then you're really in strange places, So you better have a healthy degree of respect for the risk you're taking, and so don't have hubris that you can take any kind of risk. So we just had way too much volatility. The belief being we're so big that we can handle it. Not dumb, not good. It's a very stupid thing. So we had to cut that back and get it down, and therefore the reinsurance that we put in place was really to reduce the volatility of the results. Because if you're taking risks that have a very rare possibility of occurrence, you can still have a bad day. Okay, so you cannot figure out whether you had a bad day and you did something stupid or you did something smart and had a bad day. You couldn't figure it out. And so the ups and downs, you don't want to go to to your investors and say, we did everything right, I'm sorry that we have a 300% loss ratio this quarter. That's the way things go. Nobody wants to hear that, So we had to cut. So volatility was an important thing, even where we were putting up massive limits, not getting paid for it. I had to go buy facultative with money I didn't have just to cut the volatility down. So that was one big aspect of the reinsurance partnership. The other is just another set of eyes. I think the issues of reinsurance, the value of reinsurance, I should say, that part of it is just underrated. And it is so important to have people come in and take a look at what you're doing, who have seen what's going on in the industry, can tell you your group is great or they're really bad. And so how would you know that? And the other thing I would say is I've been an underwriter, I've managed underwriters for a long time. They can move from company to company. They can be less concerned about even their boss's feelings about them. But the reinsurer never goes away. When you go from company A to company B, you still need the same reinsurers to help you out. So you make sure that those reinsurers love you, right? And so you really want to have them say the guy knows what he's doing, or he's not going to get support. So if you have that reinsurance overlay, it really is a great risk management tool, well above the volatility adjustments. And you don't buy reinsurance to make a bad book good. Okay, that doesn't work. So it's to reduce volatility and to get another set of eyes to verify that you're on the right track.
You've been around this island for quite a few years now, and you've seen the industry evolve a little bit, and the pace of evolution of the industry seems to be changing. Yeah. How do you think the years to come in this industry on this island play out? What needs to be done to make sure the industry remains healthy?
Well, I've been here a long time. So I got here 25 years ago, but I've been observing it even longer than that. ACE and XL were formed in the mid '80s, so that's a long time ago now. And I've been on panels 20 years ago. Like, does Bermuda have a future? Are we going to be able to survive? I mean, this question comes up over and over again. It's like, do you think mergers and acquisitions will take place? Yes, of course, naturally. Because I've had that, So how does Bermuda continue to survive? What are the attributes of Bermuda that will allow it to continue to survive? It's really the thing. if you look at Bermuda, it's a safe bet when you're forming a company, right? You're going to gather capital, you're going to capital providers, and you say, well, we have this idea, okay, we're going to put it in Bermuda. Well, that's okay, so that's all right, that's acceptable. So right away, you've got a venue that people will put their money into, so that's good. You've got an infrastructure and a history of success. You've got a regulatory climate that is tough, but fair. Perfect. So you just need to be innovative. And I think the Bermuda will continue to survive if it continues to be the innovative place for the market. ILS really happened here because Bermuda accepted it as an alternative, even though you'd say, well, it's going to destroy, you know, if you're really worried about things, you say, well, it's going to destroy the cat market. Yet we allowed it to come in because if you don't do it here, it's going to happen someplace else. Better to capture the idea than to let it capture you. So I think the Bermuda, if it continues to be innovative, this open market for great ideas and keeps its infrastructure, and the people around this room continue to want to come here to, you know, have their career, you know, go from, you know, good to great, it's going to survive. But that doesn't mean there's going to be years where it's down, you know, where new formations are not occurring and old formations are coming together. But that's the cyclical nature of our business. That's not an indication that there's something wrong. It's a healthy kind of seasonality to the business cycle. And
what are the sort of frontiers of innovation that has your eye and the eye of AIG in particular?
Well, we bought into Validus. I'm sure there's some Validus guys in the room. We bought them, one, because they were great risk managers in the cat business, and they also had a couple of other very wonderful things like a Lloyd's syndicate and crop business in the U.S. and an E&S platform. But they also had this ILS platform called AlphaCat, and I remember being asked by one of the rating agencies, why'd you buy the company? And I said, well, today I'd have to say it's the reinsurance. If he asked me 5 years from now, it might be the ILS. I think that thing has great, this market has great long-term potential, although it's going to be a little choppy this year, I'd say.
Yeah.
So I think ILS is one. We have a resurgence of companies that want to get into the runoff business, both life and gen. I don't know if that's innovative, but it's certainly becoming that we're becoming a place where that happens. So continue to form companies around that. And who knows? I think some kind of cyber breakthrough's got to happen, and my bet is it happens here.
There is some sense, I mean, it's been pointed out before this morning that everything old is new again. But there is some sense
that make a great song. You know? Just kidding.
That there's sort of rising liability and casualty payout risk.
Yeah.
The millennials are sitting on juries and raising trouble. Social inflation. Do you see something there that is merely cyclical and a repeat of an old story? Or are we seeing a change in the baseline or a secular change on that front?
Well, probably too early to call that one. It is not a new phenomenon. I mean, I can remember in the 70s running the actuarial department for Hank that, he sent me to Washington to work on tort reform. Because juries were out of control and judges were making interesting decisions that didn't bear any resemblance to the contract law. That went its course, there's a cyclical nature of that, and so if I had to bet, I'd bet cyclicality, not something new. It's kind of hard to bet on something that's never happened before. It's more likely this, but the fact that it's a cyclical thing doesn't mean that it won't get worse before it gets better. I think it probably will. I think social inflation probably will run like our California wildfires for a while.
Stephen Caitlin has made a somewhat fire and brimstone prediction about a hole in the industry's reserves for this kind of thing.
Giant.
Yes.
Sucking sound.
Yeah, so is there in fact a giant sucking sound? And does the industry as a whole need to be conservative in its reserving practices?
Well, it should always be conservative in its reserving practices, right? And the reserving practices are kind of interesting. So you put a reserve up for this year, usually you have a margin of error, because things can go wrong in the reserves itself. And you let that hold for a while, and if you're right, there really was a margin, then you release the margin, right? But that release doesn't happen for 3, 4, 5 years or whatever, and maybe you don't release it immediately. But subsequent to that, you had another year, put it up, another year, put it up. And so if you do it in a kind of consistent way, your releases in a year are equal to the reserves you put up in a year, right? Kind of balances out. But if you got the prior years wrong and the margins of error are not quite the same, they're less, okay, there's less release in the past, more going up now, net, you got a bigger loss, right? And if this year was really, really wrong, you even got to put up more. And so I think this recognition of loss costs going back in time, particularly long tail lines, has naturally caused this. Now, I don't think it's because people are cheating, but I think there's a current recognition that the assumptions of the past are not as robust as they turned out to be, and you're going to have to put more up. And that means you're going to have to price more. That dictates higher pricing, and on and on and on. So is there some big gap in the reserves? I wouldn't bet on that, but I would say that the reserve posture of the industry is weaker, for sure.
I have a few more questions for Brian, but I want the audience to be thinking of questions themselves. I know many of you will have questions, so think of them, and we'll look for them after I put one or two more. You mentioned price, needing to get price, given the amount of capital that's sloshing around not just this industry, but indeed the world. Is this an environment where you can price sensibly and not lose business?
You know, that's an interesting question. I don't know what I would have answered had you asked me that question a year ago. What I did know a year ago is I wasn't getting anywhere near the kind of pricing I needed, and my portfolio was actually worse than that because we had excessive risk in it too, and I wasn't so sure about my risk selection. So that's like a triple header. That's a trifecta, I should say. I mean, that's bad, bad, and bad, you know, or worse. So we knew we had to do something. I really didn't care if the industry followed or not. Didn't matter to me. Yes. You know, if I lost a lot of business and it went into the marketplace, so be it. Better you have it than me. God bless you. Go in peace with this stuff because it's no good. So, you know, but lo and behold, the whole industry seems to have changed. And then, so that's a head scratcher, right? So what happened? And the leadership at AIG, that's fine. Lloyd's also led, I think, in the E&S. But, you know, I've been saying, this is it's an interesting phenomenon because it seems to be done through rational thought. Who'd have thunk it?
Yeah.
We are being rational as an industry. I said, I was at the CIAB, I did a toast, and we was one of the brokers, and I said, look at that, we need all the partners we can get because we are acting rationally. We are in uncharted waters here.
Yes. And
we don't know where we're going. So we are acting, interestingly, the way one would hope we would. That's the great thing about it. It's not some, you know, crazy running away from risk. It's recognizing what the risk is. It's repricing it because it needs to. No capital's disappeared, but capital has been withdrawn because it's not going to get deployed at these prices. Until the prices go up, why would you even risk your capital? And that's all very rational. So the answer is, it's not a capital question. It's a deployment of capital question here. So you could have twice as much capital. You're still not going to deploy it at these prices, right? So it's return on capital that seems to be dictating the decisions that we are making as an industry, and that's a wonderful thing.
There's a question here from the audience. What is the bigger risk? Climate change for cat businesses, unknown cyber, or long-tail casualty losses? That's like the three dogs at the three-headed dog at the gates of hell there, right? Cerberus, right? Yeah. Climate change, cyber, long-tail.
Yeah, okay. So
choose your dog.
What I should do, embrace one of those?
Yeah,
let
exactly.
the other two go, or something like that. Well, that's a great question. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? Who knows? I mean, climate risk, well, we know it's We know it's there. We just are having a hard time pricing it. In other words, trying to put it in a model in some intelligent way, and then so in a reaction to a risk like that, we're all doing what a rational person would do, which would be take money off the table. You know, if you got concentration risk, reduce the concentration. If you can lay it off, spread the risk. So that's CAT. I'm talking out loud. There's maybe an answer in there someplace.
We'll get there.
Cyber, on the other hand, we don't know anything.
Yes.
You know, we know more about CAT than we know about cyber. Let's be honest. And you know, the bad guys have a better R&D department than we do, right? So they're
do we even know who the bad guys are?
Exactly, and they're myriad. You know, from state-sponsored all the way down to crazies. So you put that together, you've got a risk you don't have any clue about. We are throwing more capital at it. So I don't know. We as an industry are voting for that cyber's not as bad as CAT. That's the vote.
AIG.
You voted, you know.
AIG's not voting that way, though, right?
Well, we're the biggest CAT, we're the biggest cyber writer, so I'm guilty as charged, and I guess. Or one of the biggest cyber writers, but we are very careful about limits. We're very careful about spreading it. We're trying to lay it off. But the truth is, I worry more about cyber than I do about CAT, frankly.
But you can't stay out of the business. That's very interesting to me. You feel you have to be there.
Well, because our clients, this is the biggest risk they're facing. There are clients who face CAT risk. There are many who don't. Every client faces cyber. It is the biggest single global risk we face. Casualty, a U.S. phenomenon. Okay, so if you don't write much in the U.S., you could care less about long-tail casualty lines in the United States. I'd say I'd have to put casualty long-tail at the bottom of that, and I'd have to put cyber at the top. Okay, there you go. I guess I answered the question.
Yeah. you rank them. So there has to be a risk then, just to stick on cyber, there has to be a risk that the industry goes through a painful learning process.
Yeah.
You have to be there for your clients. You're trying to spread it. You're trying to set limits. But it's going to be an education, to put it euphemistically, potentially in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and I think those who take on the risk, right, have to be incredibly professional, understanding the rapid change in it. That's why we went to an affirmative approach to cyber, because first of all, it's not even priced it's in there someplace, because it's not, you didn't say it wasn't, which is a bad situation for everybody, client, broker, and insurance company alike. So I said, look, if it's going to be written, I want it written affirmatively. I want it written by somebody who knows what they're doing. If we're going to take this risk, let's do it professionally. It's like, have somebody doing an engineering risk and doesn't know anything about engineering at all. So I think that's the problem with cyber is it's really a specialist business, but it's spread across all our lines. So we better get it out of places it doesn't belong, get it into another place and isolate it. And we still run the risk of a cyber 9/11. I think that's still an issue out there.
All right. Well, I hope you'll all thank me join me in thanking Brian for taking us into this uncharted territory.